The hills above Red River Valley were silent that morning, save for the wind sighing through the pines. Ezra Kane, known in the region as the Mountain Man, had spent 15 years alone in those ranges. Solitude was his chosen companion after a life too full of noise, war, and blood. He knew every trail, every deer track, and every hollowed log where rattlesnakes liked to sun themselves. But on that late autumn dawn, as the mist clung low to the ridges, Ezra stumbled upon something that froze his blood in a way no wolf's howl ever could. There, suspended from the rafters of an abandoned ranger outpost, was a woman. Blonde hair tangled around her face like a halo of golden straw. Her body swung gently in the draft. Across her bare midriff, crudely seared into her flesh, were two words, Apache lover. Ezra wasn't a man easily shaken. He had seen death before, in battlefields where men bled out on desert sand. But this was different. It wasn't war, it was deliberate cruelty. The outpost was 20 miles from the nearest town. No accident had placed her here. Someone wanted her found. Someone wanted a message delivered. He cut her down with his hunting knife, laying her gently on the floorboards. Her eyes, a startling pale blue, were still open, staring up at the ceiling beams. She couldn't have been more than 30. Her wrists were bound with rawhide, her fingernails broken from fighting. Ezra muttered a prayer, though he wasn't much of a church man anymore. Then he noticed something else, her boots. Expensive, polished, not the sort of footwear anyone from around here would have. She wasn't local. By noon, Ezra had ridden down to town, the story spilling reluctantly from his lips to Sheriff Callum Reeves. Reeves was young, barely out of his 30s, and new to the county. He didn't like Ezra much, thinking of him as some half-wild hermit with too many war stories. But the moment Reeves saw the body, his face hardened. God Almighty, the sheriff muttered, covering the woman's chest with his coat. Who the hell would do this? Ezra's answer was quiet but sharp. Somebody with a grudge against the Apache, or against anyone who cared for them. The sheriff glanced at the burned words. Apache lover. His jaw tightened. I know that phrase. Been whispered in town these past weeks. Some folks don't like the idea of settlers mixing with natives. Old hatred still burns. Ezra remembered. He had fought beside Apache scouts in the wars. He knew the prejudice that still ran like poison through the veins of certain men. Reeves asked Ezra to stay out of the investigation, but Ezra wasn't the kind to walk away. He returned to the outpost the next day, searching for traces the sheriff might have missed. He found them in the ashes of the fireplace, scraps of burned paper. With careful fingers, he pieced together what little was left. A name survived the flames, Clara Whitfield. That night, Ezra slipped into the town library, dusty and seldom used. He pored through old ledgers until he found her, Clara Whitfield, heiress from Kansas City. Her father owned Whitfield Rail and Mining, a company with heavy interests in Arizona Territory. Why would a wealthy woman from Kansas be here, hidden away in the hills? Ezra's instincts whispered the answer. She wasn't here by choice. 2 nights later, Ezra was followed on the trail. His instincts caught the sound of horse hooves shadowing him through the timber. He doubled back silently, knife ready, and surprised the rider. The man was Apache, scarred across one cheek, wearing a faded army jacket. He didn't reach for his gun. Instead, he raised both hands. My name is Nanton, he said. I was her protector. Ezra lowered his blade but not his suspicion. Her protector. She came to help my people, Nanton explained. To build schools, to fight against the mines that cut into sacred ground. She cared, more than most white women ever would. That's why they called her an Apache lover. His voice cracked with grief. And that is why they killed her. Ezra felt the truth in the man's words. But one question gnawed at him. Who was they? The next week revealed whispers in every corner of the valley. Clara Whitfield had been seen in town, speaking with miners, even dining with the sheriff. Some claimed she was too friendly with Nanton, that she defended the Apache against settlers. Prejudice had turned against her. And prejudice had teeth. Ezra began to suspect men of influence were involved. The kind who would kill to keep their power. He dug deeper, visiting saloons and listening to drunk tongues wag. A name rose again and again, Silas Gentry. Gentry owned half the valley's silver mines. He was known for ruthlessness, for hiring his own enforcers to silence dissent. If Clara threatened his empire by siding with the Apache, it made sense that Gentry would want her erased. Ezra wasn't prepared for the ambush. 4 masked riders cornered him outside town, revolvers flashing in the moonlight. Mountain rat should have stayed out of business that ain't his, one of them snarled. Ezra fought like the soldier he once was, his knife striking quick, his rifle booming once in the darkness. By the time the dust cleared, one rider was dead, 2 were wounded and fled, and the last lay moaning at his feet. Ezra yanked off the man's mask. It was one of Gentry's foremen. Who gave the order? Ezra growled, pressing the knife to his throat. The man coughed blood and whispered, Gentry, didn't want her talking, didn't want the company shamed. He died before Ezra could ask more. The mountain man carried the truth like a fire in his chest. Clara had died because she had the courage to stand for people no one else would defend. And Gentry had killed her for it. Ezra and Nanton swore an oath beside her grave, marked only with wildflowers and stones. They would bring Gentry down, even if it cost them their lives. When the valley awoke weeks later to the sound of explosions tearing through Gentry's mines, no one knew who had set them. But whispers spread of a scarred Apache and a ragged mountain man riding together under the cold stars, carrying justice in the shadows. And though Clara Whitfield's voice was silenced, her name became a quiet legend among those hills, spoken in the same breath as defiance. For in the end, it was not her enemies who remembered her, but those who believed that one woman, branded an Apache lover, had stood taller than all the men who sought to bury her.